I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. The jury seeing a different side of one of the government's key witnesses in the Sean Diddy Combs trial as she faced cross-examination today. Combs' ex-girlfriend, who is going by the name of Jane, snapping back at the defense late in the day after testifying earlier that she still loves Combs. The defense painting her as a jealous type who couldn't handle the hip-hop mogul's polyamorous lifestyle. Jane was also questioned about a trip she took with Combs to Turks and Caicos and a voice note she sent him. It said, "I had so much fun with you," even though she previously testified she wouldn't have gone if she knew a male escort would show up. Jane also testifying about the chemistry between herself, Combs, and a male escort, Paul, saying it was so strong they nicknamed it the trifecta. The trio also allegedly comparing themselves to sports stars Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and Michael Jordan. Combs has denied all allegations and says all the sex was consensual. We'll break down everything that happened in court, but coming up, we'll go one-on-one with the sketch artist who is giving the entire world a glimpse into the high-profile trial with her courtroom drawings. We'll ask her about something Diddy said to her, that she's making him look like a koala bear. There's no cameras allowed in federal court for us to watch and listen to the proceedings for ourselves, but that's where our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, comes in. Aaron has been in the courtroom for this entire trial. He joins us now live outside the courthouse. And Aaron, this was the third day that Jane has been on the witness stand. Did we learn anything new today?
Oh, it was the first day under cross-examination, and it was sassy and spicy at turns. The jury saw long exchanges of text messages where the defense was trying to show that Jane was a willing, maybe even eager participant in the kind of sexual lifestyle that Sean Combs was pushing. And they saw occasions when she would text Sean Combs about nights they could get slutty together, where she's making the arrangements with the male escorts, where she is telling Sean Combs what she wants to do with those male escorts. It was pretty raunchy stuff. Jane says in those moments she was only trying to make Sean Combs happy because she knew that's what he wanted to hear. But it is a different side because on direct examination, Jane said that she did not want any of that to occur. She only wanted to have sex with Sean Combs.
To use your words, Jane at one point got real sassy and spicy with the defense today. Why?
And it came as the defense attorney, Tenny Garagos, was trying to highlight what she had gotten out of the relationship. Because remember, Eva, she had said that it made her feel evil, like an animal, like a porn star. She was repulsed. She was disgusted. And then Tenny Garagos says, yeah, but you got a lot of gifts, didn't you? Did you get a Chanel bag? And she looked at her and said, no, I only got trauma. What about a Bottega Veneta bag? And she sort of recoiled at that and said, well, you know what that's like, to the defense attorney. And Tenny Garagos kind of shot back, no, I don't. What's that cost? And that's when Jane looked at her and said, it cost my, what does my body cost? And it was a moment where the judge had to remind her to just answer the question. But she showed some fight after a number of hours on cross-examination where she was effectively accused of being in it for the money and the gifts and the 5,300 square foot house in Los Angeles instead of the 1,400 square foot apartment she had been living in before Sean Combs started paying her rent.
Was there anything that stood out to you about the defense's questions to Jane?
I think it was pretty straightforward. And Tenny Garagos actually had a kind of nice rapport. Remember, Jane said that she was meeting with defense attorneys as recently as 2 months ago before she opted to stop communicating with them and testify for the prosecution. So she and Tenny Garagos knew each other. Garagos made a point of saying as much at the outset, and they seemed to have a light banter until that moment where they started talking about luxury handbags, and it got a little more tense, and Jane asked for a break. But I think the whole goal was to show that Jane never really resisted what Sean Combs wanted her to do. She said she didn't want to do it on direct examination, but there she was in text messages talking about getting down and dirty with these male escorts over and over again.
Aaron Kotursky for us there at the federal courthouse. Aaron, thank you so much. Let's dig into today's cross-examination of Jane. Criminal defense attorney and ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalobos is here to talk us through this. Okay, what stood out to you today?
So let me tell you, in terms of Jane's testimony today, literally it was night and day. Jane became a completely different person. Of course, they always ask, how does a witness do? You don't know how a witness does until they're on cross-examination. So today the defense was able to flip her by saying, like, making her a defense witness. So we saw her through direct examination. She was crying pretty much like 50% of the time during direct examination, looking down at all times, never looking at the prosecutor when she was asking questions. But here, the defense, when they were cross-examining Jane, completely different story. She was looking directly at the defense attorney, at Tenny, and also she was answering those questions. But they were able to flip her in the sense of getting a whole bunch of yes and no answers and getting to actually agree that Sean Combs was a good man, going at the character, making her a character witness without even calling them on their own case. So in terms of the cross-examination, what really stood out, the one catty moment that Aaron just mentioned, because literally it looked like Tenny got under the skin of Jane today, to the point when she mentioned was like, how much does my body cost? Or talking about that bag, I'm sure you have one. Literally all I thought about was like, yeah, cat fight here. So she asked for a break. After 20 or 30 minutes, we came back and they ended the cross-examination for the day. But let's go into those text messages, how the defense was able to make Jane their witness on the case. So one of the text messages, I loved when we would make love and said he wanted me. He would say things like he never wanted to leave and so many loving things. Remember what I said, that the defense was able to make Jane a character witness for Sean Combs. They were able to bring out so many good moments. Like, this
because she was even saying today that she still loves
exactly
him.
Like, he's not a monster. Like, he was a good man. He cared for me. He asked about my feelings and what I needed and how I can help. Like, this is the type of man he was. But you know what? The defense had an advantage here. The reason is because, remember, the defense is paying for her legal fees, but also the defense was able to meet with her multiple times before the trial. So they knew what type of witness they were getting and what those answers would be and how to actually broach this witness during cross-examination. So let's go into some more text messages. Text message. We had just done so many hotels and privacy was just starting to become an issue for me. If we got a home that was to his taste level, we could just start doing them here in the privacy of our own home. Again, going to that home, the rent that was being paid by Sean Combs. And now look, he was willing to give her everything and to take care of her. Again, taking away that force, fraud, and coercion away from the prosecution and making it seem like this was all consensual. A huge problem for the defense, for the prosecution.
We also have to talk about this trifecta.
Oh, yes. So this trifecta, this really stung when it came for the prosecution, because Jane was actually talking about a specific night, a hotel night, that it was so perfect, that it marveled her, that it shook her to the core in the sense of how happy she was, that she felt like this was the perfect mix for the three of them, where Jane was the late, great Kobe Bryant, where Combs was Michael Jordan, and where Paul, who's Sean Combs' personal trainer, was Shaq, and that the chemistry between the three was just amazing. Again, it's not sex trafficking by force, fraud, and coercion when you have this trifecta effect when you're talking about the sex, the hotel nights that they had engaged in.
Bernarda, we've got a lot more to talk about with you. Don't go anywhere. Still ahead, inside the legal strategies for the prosecution and defense, and why who allegedly asked Jane to bring drugs on a plane could be the key to proving the charges against Diddy. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thanks for streaming with us. Diddy's ex-girlfriend Jane was cross-examined today by the defense. That is expected to take at least a couple more days to finish up. To break down the legal strategies we saw today, we have ABC News legal contributor Shauna Lloyd as the defense and Bernarda Villalobos back analyzing the prosecution. Shauna, let's start with you. In cross, What's the defense trying to do here?
So they're directly trying to attack this human trafficking charge. How are they doing that? They are saying the force and coercion is essentially basically this house that she was living in. They immediately attacked that because what they talked about was, why did you get the house? You got the house because you guys wanted private moments to have these hotel nights and not be in the public eye. This was supposed to be a safe haven for them to have them in. So that's one. Two, they talked about her income. They talked about the fact that she was making $50,000 on Instagram. They talked about the fact that she had 2 brands that she was also promoting and that were profitable to show that she could actually afford her own lifestyle. Therefore, the home can't be held over her head. Then we saw them move into the hotel nights. When we talk about the hotel nights, the drugs, she talked about how she felt great on them, how she had they had wonderful love-making sessions. Then they moved into this idea that she actually had much more control over these escorts. She chose the escorts. She had the ground rules for the escorts. They couldn't do drugs and she has to choose them. And so they were really breaking that down to say that she was a willing participant, saying that she wanted to participate in these slutty nights and that she wanted to invite them over and buy a movie projector so they could re-watch these events. So that's really what they were doing. And the last thing that they did that was phenomenal was they got under her skin. This whole idea that she and Sean Combs had this physical altercation, we saw that spice in her. We saw the ability to get very kind of attitude and temper. And that's what they wanted to do because they wanted her not to appear as demure. And I think they succeeded today.
Bernarda, was this damaging?
It was a bit damaging. However, remember that the prosecution is going to be able to come back on redirect. But also, you have to remember that the Jane that you're seeing today is not the Jane that was in these hotel rooms back in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Here we're in 2025, and she's in therapy now. She's talking to a therapist. Like, she's now understanding that how Sean Combs had manipulated and had control over her, and that she wasn't able to say no. So in terms of, is it working? When it comes to prosecutors and putting on witnesses, you take your witnesses as you get them. You take your victims as you get them. So yes, they all have baggage. Jane has baggage. Cassie had baggage. Every witness who stepped forward had some kind of baggage. And you're not trying to clean it up for the jury. So you're going to present to the jury at the end like, look, this is who Jane is. This is exactly who Sean Combs preyed upon because of who she is and who she was during those years. So they'll be able to explain it. It's going to come down to closing arguments, of course, and they're going to be able to do it during cross-examination.
But I think even though they're going to rehabilitate her, as Bernarda said, the problem with it is that she's looking back. Hindsight is 20/20. She even admitted that although she's in therapy now and realizes that she should have vocalized the part she didn't want to participate in, she also has already acquiesced that she did want to participate. She did not want him to, and his attention and his affections to turn elsewhere.
But the problem is that the defense, the problem that they have is that there's strength in numbers. So if you put Jane and also Cassie together, you have that pattern. Had this been a case just about Cassie or a case just about Jane, then yes, the defense will have a stronger case. There would be reasonable doubt. But because they put both of them together and you have the sprinkle of Mia there and Abana there and of the other witnesses, it's a different story for the defense.
When you talk about the victims, the alleged victims in this case, you have 2 of them. Some of their stories are the same. Some of them are different. What are you hoping that the jury, as the prosecutor, what are you hoping the jury takes away from that?
So what the prosecution is trying to do, and this is why they bring that racketeering conspiracy. This is why the feds love that charge, because you're able to bring in so many bad acts. You're able to bring in that pattern. You're able to look back years ago, 10 years in the past, and bring all these bad acts that the defendant allegedly engaged in. So the prosecution is hoping that the jury sees that, look, Jane's story, well, you know, I kind of believe it because Cassie has a similar story, or Cassie, I believe her because Jane also has a similar story. Like, this is not something that's being made up. They corroborate each other. 2 women that don't know each other giving the same story, to the point that even during direct examination yesterday, Jane said when she read Cassie's lawsuit, 3 of those pages were like she was reading her own story. It was identical to what she went through.
Shauna, who do you think Does the defense need to call any witnesses? Do you think they're going to put on
Absolutely.
a case?
They're going to put on a case, because what you really have is that you have someone who we've already established has done these reprehensible acts. Some of the things that the jury is going to be inflamed about, he's not on trial for. And that's what is really important about this. His sexual preferences and what he liked is not what's on trial. Whether what happened in the elevator shaft is not on trial. So what they're really looking at is the RICO and breaking that down. So they are going to bring witnesses. I expect to see someone either that was a supporting staff, a personal assistant, a bodyguard, to speak to the fact that although they were present, they were not aware. And that is something else the defense got out on the stand today, is that they did not and were not aware of what was happening at these hotel nights or the freak-offs.
Shauna, Bernarda, thank you both for being with us. Coming up, we see the trial through her eyes and sketches. The artist behind our view of the proceedings tells us how this trial compares to other high-profile cases and what Diddy complained to her about. That's next. Welcome back to Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy. We are in the 5th week of testimony in the trial against Sean Diddy Combs. And because it is a federal trial, there are no cameras in court. But sketch artist Jane Rosenberg has been there each and every day, providing us with her vantage point through court sketches from the courtroom. She's no stranger to high-profile cases, sketching the likes of President Trump, Luigi Mangione, Bill Cosby, and Ghislaine Maxwell, all during their court appearances. And Jane joins us now from outside the courthouse. Thank you so much for being with us. You provided the sketches from the courtroom for Combs' criminal trial in 2001. Besides the 20-plus years, what's the difference between him then and now?
Well, he looks very different. He has gray hair and a gray beard, a white goatee beard, and he looks a little bit older. Other than that, I don't think he looks that much different. I did look at my old sketches. I was surprised that I couldn't remember what he looked like. So before I did the trial, I looked at those. Yeah.
Last week, Combs actually came up to you and told you that your sketches of him made him look like a koala bear. How did you respond to that?
Oh, I didn't really respond. I just wrote down his words so I'd remember them, because sometimes I forget what people say when I'm busy working. So I thought that was interesting. I had to, when I got out of the room, I actually Googled what a koala bear looks like so that I saw a little white goatee, so maybe that's what he was talking about. And I did ride the elevator down with the family, who were very appreciative of my sketches, and it made me feel good. But I told them, told me I made him look like a koala bear, and they all just giggled, and then the elevator door opened and I got out. So.
I'm curious, how did you become the sketch artist for some of New York's top cases?
Well, that goes back to the history of how I became a sketch artist in the first place, because I've been doing it 45 years, and I saw a courtroom artist a long time ago do a lecture at the Society of Illustrators, and I thought, I want to do this. So I started coming to court at 100 Center Street, where the Trump trial was, and I asked the court officers, where do the artists sit? What do they bring? And I asked so many questions. They said, come next week, we'll let you sit with the media. And there were 2 other artists, and one had Fox on the portfolio, and I didn't know who the other one was, so I called the startup company, and back then it was CNN. They were just a startup company. So they said, we had somebody. So then I had to call one of the big 3. I called NBC and they said, come on in, let's see what you've got. I went to 30 Rock and they used my sketches. I called my parents, I was very excited, and that's how it started. So now there were a lot more courtroom artists back in when I started. But now with all these new stations, cable stations, bloggers, there's too many. If everybody had their own artists, there would not be enough space in the courtroom. So I guess I'm one of the main artists that are still around.
I've watched courtroom artists sketch out during trials. It's so fascinating to watch. When you start to begin your drawing, what do you look for to begin it, and what's the concept behind them?
Well, what I look for, I look at what's going on today in the courtroom. If somebody's In the morning, usually I'll see Diddy speaking with his lawyers. They have conferences, or maybe he's throwing kisses or hearts to his family. I'll often try to do a morning sketch of that, which I can't usually finish in the morning, but I'll finish it later on because I just don't have that much time in the morning before a witness gets on the stand. Once a witness is on the stand, I have to draw the witness, capture a likeness, although the sex victims, I'm not allowed to draw their facial features. I can draw their hair and clothing, but no facial features, which is why you see these weird blank faces. So I look at what's going on. If something out of the ordinary happens, a week ago, somebody jumped up in the back of the courtroom and was screaming and the judge said, get her out of here, and the guards almost tackled her and dragged her out of the courtroom, and that was something for me to draw. I had to immediately start getting that done and get it out. So that's how it goes. I look at what's going on and I make a decision.
Do you get nervous doing these sketches?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm nervous. I think in the old days I was very nervous coming to court. I'd have a knot in my stomach. But now I figure you'll just use what I give you. Maybe I'm a little better than I was back then too.
Jane Rosenberg, thank you so much for being with us and
You're
for
welcome.
the sketches that we all get to see of what's happening there in the courtroom. It's time now to see what people are searching online after the latest day of testimony in this high-profile criminal trial. The latest searches range from Bottega bag price to who is Perry Mason. To break it all down for us is ABC News contributor Kelly Carter. She covers entertainment and pop culture for us. One of the most popular searches tonight, Bottega bag price, which this is something that came up during Cross.
Yeah, everyone wants to try and figure out how much this bag costs in comparison to, say, a Chanel bag. And just for a quick comparison, Chanel clutch is going to cost you somewhere in the $6,000 range. Bottega is going to cost you somewhere in the $3,000 range for a clutch. So people are trying to place value on what that means and how we should interpret that, what we heard in the testimony today.
This is a word I never thought I would say on television, Kelly. What is a cuck?
Yeah, this is a shortened version of a term that goes back to what the Elizabethan era, essentially. And it really just means a man whose wife is unfaithful to him and everyone else is aware of this unfaithfulness. So I think it's a slang version of a word that we probably all read in a Shakespeare play back in 9th grade advanced English.
Another question people are asking is, who is Perry Mason? Why are people asking that?
That came up today because the judge, mentioned it when the defense was talking about Breonna's testimony earlier, and they're trying to figure out kind of what he meant by that and what it meant. I mean, obviously Perry Mason in its original form was a long-running series about a defense attorney and kind of a hard-boiled defense attorney, and they're trying to figure out exactly what the judge may have been implying when he made reference to that very popular show that Aaron Burr starred in for several seasons.
Last but not least, what is the Mann Act?
Yeah, this is interesting. So the Mann Act essentially is an act that prohibits the transportation of sex workers across state lines. I think it was written into law like in 1910, in the early 1900s. And so perhaps people are trying to learn a little bit more about the court system and the laws because of it and because of this case.
Kelly Carter, thank you as always.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be back with new episodes every day of the trial. The show streams right here on ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu weekdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. For even more on the Diddy trial, make sure to follow our podcast, Bad Rap: The Case Against Diddy, hosted by our very own Brian Buckmeyer on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Eva Pilgrim in New York. Have a good rest of your day.